Happy Halloween, everyone. Really excited to talk about all the things in this panel for Beyond the Veil, New Frontiers in Genre Filmmaking. So let's introduce your panelists. Guys, hop on. We've got Gigi Salguero, Noah Wagner, Lizz Marshall, and Austin Harris. So I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves in the spirit of Halloween, your favorite Halloween candy, and what short or shorts you had at NFFTY over the years. So let's start with you, Gigi.
Hi. First of all, thank you, NFFTY, for inviting me here. Happy Halloween, everybody. Well, my favorite Halloween candy, I'm gonna have to say it's the Dia de los Muertos candy, which is literally skulls covered in sugar and icing. That's it. It's the best diet. Day of the Dead has the best diet. So that's my favorite.
And what shorts have you had at NFFTY?
Oof, I go to NFFTY way back. I think ever since like 2010, 2011, like long time. NFFTY was one of my first film festivals with Dead Crossing. I came back with another short film called Dia de los Muertos. And probably my more successful short, El Gigante, which you can now watch on Shudder, which that one definitely scarred a lot of people. A lot of people did not want to talk to me after that screening, but I take that as a huge compliment. So
Absolutely. Noah, how about you?
Hey, so I'm Noah Wagner. I'm a filmmaker, a NFFTY filmmaker as well. I had a film in 2014. It was my last year of eligibility and my first year at the festival. It was called Fortissimo. It was a magical realism, kind of like a live action Pixar film. It was my thesis back when I was at NYU. And so that was sort of the film that brought me to NFFTY. As far as candy goes, I think the one I probably traded for the most was either Twix or Kit Kat. I just had to have some cookie in there or some nougat or something. I wasn't really into peanut butter growing up. So people were happy to trade for my Reese's and my Butterfingers because I didn't know what I was missing at the time.
Liz, how about you?
Hi, I'm Liz. My film, What Daphne Saw, was at NFFTY last year. And my favorite candy is Reese's.
And Austin.
Yeah, hi, I'm Austin. My film, Stevie's Aliens, was at NFFTY in 2018. And in terms of candy, I'd say my favorite is Sour Skittles.
Okay. Awesome. So I guess for all of you guys, what is it that draws you to genre filmmaking?
well, I was not allowed to watch any of it. I come from a super Catholic, super Mexican house, so you can only imagine here is like everybody's super superstitious. Everything's the devil. If you put your purse on the floor, my mom's gonna be like, "No, the devil took your money." Like everything is like no in this house. So I grew up not being allowed. So for me, what drew me so much into it, I guess it applies to everything. It's just being attracted to the mystery, the unforbidden fruit, if you will, and growing up, just not even knowing what horror was, being so, kept away from it. I never understood fear until I watched my first horror movie at 8. And it was because I stole, well, no, Mexicans, we don't steal, we borrow for a long time. I borrowed from Blockbuster the VHS of Child's Play 2. I was just a kid and I just took it. And that was the first time I saw a horror movie. I think I only got through 30 minutes. But what draws me so much to it, and I remember that moment very well, is that how a movie can follow you home. I didn't understand that as a kid. I didn't understand why Chucky's presence was so prominent. I thought he was in the closet. I thought he was right there. So I use that a lot as inspiration, is just how you can leave that lingering feeling after somebody can watch a film, no matter the genre, but horror can really stay with you. And that's, to me, really, really interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with Gigi. I think genre filmmaking has left like such an indelible mark from like a very early age. I think for me, I mean, I was too afraid to watch horror films growing up. That said, of course I watched them and then would just, you know, maybe one a year and then work my way back because I was just so terrified. But I vividly remember watching 2001: A Space Odyssey before I was probably old enough to comprehend it. And so I just remember my brain just melting by the end of the movie as like a 12-year-old, not quite sure what I had just experienced, but it had made me think, and it's so groundbreaking. I mean, not much has changed since I've gotten older. My brain still melts when I watch it. But I think as far as genre filmmaking goes, you know, my latest film was a sci-fi film called Watch Room about artificial intelligence, and before that, you know, it was magical realism. And I kind of describe what I do as like grounded genre because I don't like to limit myself to one particular one. I think what I've discovered about myself is I like being able to build a bit of a world and not, but like keep it grounded so that it is relatable. And I think that's true in sci-fi. It's true in horror. It's true in, you know, fantasy, magical realism. There's so many different genres. It gives you this like side door in where you can break rules, but it just still lets the world be familiar enough so that the audience can kind of latch in, whether that's some sort of message you're trying to impart. I mean, you look at movies like Get Out or Us, or think, you know, that's because it's all Jordan Peele, but like movies that have a social message too. It's a great way to world build and create your own rules while being able to say something really strong and entertain your audience all at the same time. So, I mean, it's the most fun for sure.
Yeah, and I guess sort of to echo a little bit what Gigi and Noah said, I also had parents who were like sort of selective about what I could and couldn't watch, and probably because like every movie scared me when I was a kid, like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, all like the Disney movies. And I think I too, I'm really drawn to movies that really can make you like feel something. And I think, you know, like horror, especially, you know, when you're on the edge of your seat, I just love the experience of like watching a movie, and for an hour and a half you're in like in this other world, you're in like you're experiencing what these characters are experiencing, just those emotions. And yeah, I guess it's that escapism. And even on sort of like the more sci-fi side, my NFFTY film was sort of this like optimistic, like Spielbergy sci-fi short. And I, again, like Close Encounters was the movie that really inspired like me to be a filmmaker in general, but also that film specifically. And it's just such a, like an optimistic sort of like happy escape, and I love like being able to watch those sorts of things, and that's the sort of content that I would want to make myself.
So similar. I really like world building, and that's always been something that's really drawn me towards genre. And like Star Wars in particular is like why I wanted to make films at like a young age. And then as I started actually writing and like making content myself, I found that it was like a good way for me to examine things in the real world at like a safe distance, and in like a way that is like sugarcoats the pill, so to speak, on like difficult subjects.
Well, this sort of segues perfectly into my next question, which is about world building. You know, for both, I think, horror and sci-fi, world building is such an important thing. When you're making shorts, how much world building do you do? How much do you think about the potential bigger story? And you know, and how do you sort of start that process?
Well, I think with a short film in general, but especially when you're doing genre, you know, I think you're thinking about the potential to use it as a proof of concept for something bigger, just strategically. But even that aside, I think like at least with Watch Room, you know, there's always like the iceberg that you're building where like there's so much world building and stuff right around the edges of the frame that kind of peek its way in and inform all the decisions that you make that you probably never see, but you just get the residual effect that's on screen. So, you know, when you're world building, you have to kind of, to some extent, figure out how the rules work because, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I remember growing up watching movies and certain genre films feeling like, you know, you just start poking holes at something and you realize the logic's not there. And sometimes that's okay too, because if you're willing to suspend disbelief because the concept is is so good, or you're just willing to go with it. Some of my favorite movies are that way. But I think especially with grounded stuff, that's part of the challenge you're welcoming upon yourself is, I remember watching Gravity, and that, it's a sci-fi film, and they tried to make it like a natural disaster, National Geographic story. And I remember hearing, a bunch of astronomers poking holes in the science of that film. But that's, yeah, definitely NASA's not going to like agree with everything in that film, but it's just such a fun ride. And I, especially in 3D, it just feels so real, and the physics of it feel just so accurate. So, which is why I think it invites that kind of critique. So, yeah, that's how I feel about world building.
Sure. And to even piggyback on that, because I totally agree, short films give you that opportunity to not only full control, but you can just throw so much in such little time. And what I mean by that is every single short film I've done, I've always approached them with the sensibilities and the thought that this could look like a clip from a bigger film. This could look like a clip from a series, and you wouldn't tell, but it still works as a standalone short. So I think the world building in short films is great because you're only giving a taste, not only for your skill, your talent, and what your team made, but you're giving a taste of what this world is. And you want people with the short film be like, oh, I don't know if I can swear. I almost swore. Sorry. People are like, oh my God, I want more. And in short films, you can do that. You can do that from 1 minute to a 15-minute short. Yeah, that's the coolest part, I think. And an approach I love to do.
Yeah, I think that is the really fun thing about a short film is that if you're specific about the world you're creating, and in an ideal scenario, then people want to see more. And I think I have to thank Anna and Dust because my short, it went up on their YouTube channel after NFFTY, and it was nice to see like some people who did want to see more. And I think what I would just suggest is just being very specific, as specific as possible, and just watching lots of similar shorts, similar movies, and just using that to figure out what exactly the world is that you want to create. And I think if you understand what it is in your head, even if you don't fit everything into like the 1 minute or 5 minutes or whatever it is, I think that if you know exactly what you're trying to do, the audience will figure it out, and they'll probably end up wanting more, which I guess is the whole point of a short film.
I agree with that. Like watching other work, even in horror movies, they have the best intros. Like the best intros that are just standalone shorts, really. Like if you look at like 20 Weeks Later, can't remember that intro with the family, has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. But you watch that 10-minute intro, you're like, oh my God. Sorry, I swear a lot. It's like, oh my God, that was sick. And sometimes like horror movies just give you the best intro that you could just watch that and you get a taste, right? To want more. Sorry, I interrupted. Yeah, I got excited.
Yeah, like in terms of like world building in my own shorts, I kind of like start as late as possible in like what would be considered like the larger film, because that's usually like the most exciting part, and you hope that you get the chance to further like delve into that world, and you kind of have the rules of that space in your head, even if it's not on screen, as Austin was saying. And like my film that was at NFFTY was like a proof of concept, and like you sort of discover things when you actually like make the film too about that world. So that's like another cool aspect.
So the panel is about pushing boundaries in genre filmmaking. So I guess for all of you, how do you feel you are pushing boundaries, or how do you feel that boundaries need to be pushed in the genre space?
I think genre is to me is the best way to escape the real horrors of the world. And kind of what Noah was saying earlier, like Jordan Peele's films, horror can do that, where you can actually have entertainment, but when the movie's over, it really can feel pretty heavy what the message was. And it's been around ever since exploitation films, revenge films, you name it. Like it's been around in the genre for a long time to push that boundary. Even when the Exorcist came out way back long time ago, people had never seen anything like that, but they pushed it. They pushed it. Same with Psycho with Hitchcock. Like it's the boundaries continue to be pushed, and now in today's world, I think horror is being so recognized, and now we call it elevated horror. What? I think we're just recognizing it because there's a lot of themes. You watch Hereditary, put all the witchcraft aside, it was about a dysfunctional family that was mourning. And you can put all these incredible, relatable themes in the most exaggerated, crazy situations in genre, and you can actually pull it off and have something to say. So I think, as young filmmakers, as new voices come about, it's our responsibility to continue to challenge audiences with real themes, new stories, new voices. 'Cause it's the only way to push out new content that has something to say. And I definitely felt that way with my feature debut last year, Culture Shock, for Hulu and Blumhouse. It was about the border crisis. And I was like, all right, I got to go full the Latino get out or else the message is not going to be across. And even talking to the studio, they were very scared of the choices I wanted to do. They were like, Gigi, it could offend people. I'm like, good, because the topic is brutal and it's there in the news. So I need to make a movie that, or a short film, whatever it is that you're making, give them the entertainment, but stay really strong to the message you want to give if it has something to say. 'Cause that's the only way that your story is going to impact someone, you know? And genre does that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think in sci-fi too, something I often think about, and I think this pertains to probably any type of filmmaking, because if you're writing a movie, if you're directing a movie, your worldview is either implicitly or explicitly in that film. And so I know, with sci-fi, you're trying to create a world, especially once again with Grounded, and I know with Watchroom we did this, where you're trying to, every decision you make is trying to convey a world or society that you would want to see. And I think movies, and as people, as storytellers and filmmakers, we kind of have this implicit responsibility to incept certain, worldviews or ideas. And it's not so sinister as Inception, but it inherently, that's why you're telling a story, is to share how you feel about a certain topic or certain, themes or perspectives. And so, with us, it's from casting and having a, diverse set of scientists, not for diversity's sake, but because, AI in our film is a human issue. And so, you've heard things about, implicitly racist AI because you've got the data that has been put in that is by not a diverse set of scientists. And so, technology is only as good as its data. And so, yeah, you just want to make sure that you're putting forth, the ideas and the perspectives that you want audiences to take home and to chew on and think about.
Yeah, I really like, Noah, what you said about like the diverse panel of scientists, just as an example, because I think in terms of pushing boundaries, yeah, like especially sci-fi, you are creating a world. You can sort of show a futuristic world that's not like the world we have now, and you can kind of sort of like correct certain things, if you will. Like, for example, all those disaster movies in the 90s that had like a Black president. Like back then, that wasn't something that we had, and now we do. And I think sometimes seeing something in a movie or TV show can just make it feel more possible. And then also, to echo what Gigi said, yeah, horror for so long has been used to, and sci-fi and genre in general has been used to talk about societal issues. And I think, like the Twilight Zone is an amazing example of that, all the way back in the 50s and 60s. And I think sometimes it's easier to sneak a message into a more like quote unquote fun movie than it is to do sort of like a sad drama about the same thing, people might cover their ears because they're being preached to. And I mean, I think, you know, in recent memory, Get Out is my favorite example of a movie like that, because, you know, that movie, it's really about liberals, like white liberals who don't think they're racist. And I think, you know, over this past year, we've really had a reckoning when it comes to like everyone's understanding of racism. And I think, you know, if that movie had been about like hillbillies and been very stereotypical, it would have been like, okay, we're like sort of, that's everyone's idea of what a racist person is. But to have this family who is trying so hard to show they're not racist and have that be the plot of the movie, I think a lot of people in the audience probably went in expecting a movie to dunk on some other people, and they're kind of like, oh, this is actually about me. And in terms of myself, I guess what I'm sort of doing now and what I want to keep trying to do is just adding new perspectives to horror. Because I think, you know, like Get Out, I think is still the most talked about horror movie of these past couple of years. And I think it's because it's a sort of a new perspective. And I think the more we get different filmmakers to come in and like communicate what makes them scared specifically, and more people in the world can say, oh, I have the exact same fear, I think that will make filmmaking more inclusive and push those boundaries.
Yeah, I agree. Like, horror is unique in that we can examine like a larger cultural fear, like in a particular time. And like, if you look back at like Night of the Living Dead, that's like a time capsule of like what particular fears were at that time, and we can still relate to it now. And I think, you know, we've seen a lot of different kinds of films, and it's just being able to add something new to that conversation or that particular monster, like what fear it evokes now. And we are seeing, like, I think more content that explicitly like has that viewpoint where you can like point to it easily instead of having to sugarcoat it as much by hiding it with something else, which is like, I think it's a sign that like audiences are wanting to see that more, and that's what we're doing.
So to hop on the sort of idea of inclusion and different perspectives, you know, for Gigi, Liz, and Austin, you know, there are not a lot of women filmmakers that get to make horror features. There are not a lot of, you know, of people of color that have gotten to work in the you know, sci-fi and horror space up till now, which is, you know, it's always big news when like Jordan Peele comes out with a new movie or something like that. So, you know, what kinds of things have you run up against as you've been pushing yourselves into this space?
A lot. It's kind of like lots of things have happened, you know. And in my shoes, you know, a lot of the cards that I got, you know, it's young, Latinx, and female. And I always want to approach that as a positive, and it's like a thing I have to offer, rather than, oh man, like that now I have it harder, which I do. But what's important is to not look at it as a disadvantage. I've always really wanted to approach it like, all right, I have my work cut out for me, then this is my advantage to work 1,000 times harder to want to prove myself. And that's fine, because it keeps me motivated, keeps me driven. So for example, for Culture Shock, my feature last year with Blumhouse, is no lie that I had to audition and pitch for that movie 4 times when I heard the other couple guys didn't. Fine. If that's how many times I have to do it, that's how many times I will do it. So it's stuff like that that I continue to face. Even my first TV episode, I had a lot of trouble in those 5 days of the shoot to get some crew to hear me out. They couldn't believe it was me running the show. But there's a certain way to approach, and a certain enthusiasm, and a certain, you know, not just charisma, but I never would want to come across as, oh, she's tough to work with. Oh, she's, you know, a jerk. Because unfortunately, sometimes for women, it could be as easy as that label quickly when you talk back. But it's not been too bad for me because I learned very quickly from my dad how to stand up and how to just think fast, get people to hear you out. Definitely the Latino dads, you know, they help us out. But it's just a lot of it has just been how you approach stuff. Don't complain about it. Just go after it. Like go after it and stay strong with what your voice is. And one of the biggest fights for Culture Shock to end it with is it was to keep it 50% in Spanish, 50% in English. Huge win. Huge win. And I think there's still so much more room for more change. I think we are on the right path in the industry for it. Like, you know, movies like Parasite have been changing it for us, and we just have to continue to challenge audiences. And I think it's up to young voices to do that, and just stick so strong with it.
Yeah, I do want to agree with Gigi on, yeah, like staying strong and trying not to like just complain about these things, because it is, you do come up against so many things that are unfair. And I guess I'm fortunate. I feel like it's been mainly smaller things for me, but I guess just an example, another YouTube channel that was hosting my short film, I set out to make this movie because I wanted to have a like Spielbergy optimistic sci-fi film that had Black main characters, and there is a white supporting character. And when they were giving me the preview for what the upload would look like, they had used the white character as a sort of the preview image, like just a shot of him. And I'm new to all of this. This is the first time that any of my films have gotten to really be published elsewhere where like more audiences will see them. And so I don't want to, to be difficult or like overreact or whatever to anything. But I did send an email and I just said, hey, it's really important to me that, like that we at least showcase the Black characters on this screenshot, because that's why I made this film in the first place. So I think, yeah, it's mainly small things like that. And, just access, because like my day job is in the industry as well. And I mean, the way that it works is, people hire people that they know already. And, I don't think that there aren't many people out there who are purposefully excluding women and people of color, but it's just the fact that this industry has never lifted them up. And now here we are in 2020, and I have a project, I need a writer. I know these 5 writers, they just all happen to be white because that's who I know. And so I think it's largely an issue just like access and being in the right rooms. And I think you just have to work a little harder to sort of break the ice and become friends with the people who make those decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely like a point of access, because you have to work a little bit harder just to get in the room, and you have to keep proving yourself. And what Gigi was saying about like, as a woman, you walk like a line of, okay, men get to be assertive. So what does that make women if you're the same way? And it's definitely a hurdle that is at the back of your mind when you're going to pitch multiple times when someone else didn't have to, or you're getting questions about, okay, is your female character likable? Things like that you don't always have to think about otherwise, but you can definitely use it in a way that expresses your viewpoints in your work too. Like, that's why I think we're also like pushing boundaries here, is because we're expressing new viewpoints that haven't been told, because like we're in a group that hasn't really traditionally been showcased on screen, like our voices.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got a question from the audience. So, for those of you that have worked in the bigger space with studios, how do you navigate pushback from those studio execs and from the audiences too about controversial themes and imagery in your films, in your works?
Working with studios, the first thing you got to learn, and I think all of us on this panel know this term, but if you haven't heard this term, you got to learn the film term, killing babies. And killing babies is a very tough thing to do. No, it's not literal. Let me just make that clear. But yeah, but killing babies, is learning how to compromise and picking your battles. And that's probably the most important thing in skill you got to learn quick when you work with a studio, because we all come from short films. You have so much freedom and full control, and you lose that real quick. Even though you get the opportunity, it's humbling, it's a blessing, but you're still working for somebody. It is somebody else's money, and so you have to learn how to kill babies and pick the right ones that you want to stick with. So that's probably one of the toughest jobs I've had to really get through, working with studios. Now, really, I've been doing it for a couple years now. It's been tough, but you learn really quick how to balance that trust. It's almost like you're playing a game with studios of, all right, that's what you want, then I want to keep this, or the I think the trick we all know of, you bring up an old idea and you say was theirs, and they're like, yeah, I said that. It's like, yeah, you did. You're the smart one. And it was your idea the whole time. But there's ways to manage it, because sometimes they're very afraid of certain controversial themes and imagery, and still, like, especially I think in genre, we want to push that button further because we want to impact the audience. And it's not just about scares, it really is about themes. So sometimes, how far can you push it to actually get that message across? It's up to the filmmaker. So you really have to learn to pick your battles to make those certain scenes pop.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that, I feel like anytime you do get a note that you're feeling like is potentially detrimental to your vision, or you've been not closed-minded about it, but this is near and dear to your heart. I always try to look at it from the perspective of how can I now think outside the box and improve my film? Because I know I've definitely run into things just on set, just from Murphy's Law taking effect. Anything that will go wrong, that can go wrong, will go wrong. And anytime that's happened on a production, and there have been some things that seem devastating at the time, but it's happened enough times where whenever that happens, I just think it's the film god throwing me a bone, saying, hey, let me give you an opportunity to improve your film. This would have been okay. And it's the same with the notes. I mean, I think you need to have a kind of a pecking order in your head of, as Gigi was saying, how you're going to, fight your battles or pick your battles. Because there are certain things that, maybe you're like, this is the DNA of the film. I need to maybe explain this to you in a different way. Or, okay, this person isn't just trying to meddle with this film for the sake of it. They're coming from a good place. Even if they're coming from a place of fear, then it's your job to help them understand why this is the risk worth taking. So yeah, it's always, they're coming from a place. You're just going to find the note behind the note and really get to that, and then you can find a good compromise. At least that's been perspective I try to keep when I run into that.
Cool. Okay, so 2020 has been a bizarre year in a lot of ways. It's been almost like a sci-fi or horror story. The amount of quarantine related shorts that I've seen that were made years ago and have a whole new meaning now. The amount of horror films that are about isolation and loneliness and things like that. Have you found in this year that how has this year inspired your filmmaking, and sort of what have you taken away from the crazy experience of all that we've been through this year?
Oh man.
I mean, I know, I for one, I had 2020 we hit January 1st. I'm like, this is my year. I'm going to make it. You
All
know,
of us.
I had all these projects ready to rock. And I didn't, this was the first year I didn't have like plans for how I was going to go, but I had like the projects I wanted to do. And it was just an open canvas, a blank canvas. It was great. And then I'm on set, or I'm scouting like a spec Nike commercial. I'm on a basketball court. The sun is setting. It's beautiful. And then I find out the NBA has canceled their season. And then I realize, oh, we're in pandemic mode, and all of my plans are out the window. But what that made me realize after the existential dread and like a month's worth of hot Cheetos were in the bag.
Those are great though. Those are really good.
It's the only thing with the shelf life. Basically, I realized that I was beginning to become a slave to the Ouija board that is opportunities and career, and just sort of like, you do have to follow the opportunities, but by the same token, I just didn't feel like I was being true to myself anymore, or I was just trying to like follow the winds, wherever the wind took me. And so this year has sort of forced me to double down on like what do I want to make? What do I want to be known for? What are the your work begets opportunities. If you're a horror filmmaker and you love horror, you're gonna make horror films that hopefully suit like your interests and your tastes. And then people will be like, oh, I know the type of movie you like to make. Here's another one, and so, I've really just worked on passion projects I had been working on for a while. I had this unscripted like food show about friendship and like excessive eating that is such a like all outlier of stuff that I'm working on, but I had the footage sitting around and I just worked on it. Right? I have this magical realism film that I hope will be my first feature, called The Dirty Oyster, which is kind of this like dark hallucinatory rom-com, which is something that's haunted me. I always think about my love life through the lens of this concept, and finally I'm like, you know what, it's time to work on this. And I'm so happy to finally be working on this thing and finally telling stories. Not that I wasn't before, but really fine-tuning who am I and what exact stories do I want to tell if I could tell anything.
Yeah, I think I ironically for me, I've actually been doing more filmmaking, I think, than I was before. And I think it's forced me to be more creative. And so like, for example, right when quarantine started, back when I thought it was just going to be like a month or two, that celebrity video where everyone was singing Imagine, I got a couple of my friends to send me snippets of the Hereditary I'm Your Mother monologue from the dinner table, and just like make like an inspirational video of everyone like doing that monologue. And I was just bored, and I thought that'd be fun, and it ended up A24 retweeted it, and it like got like a million views and stuff. And so I was like, okay, let me like do more. And I did this music video. I got my friends to like record their own parts. Did not go viral, but it was still a fun exercise, and I learned a lot about like editing and Premiere that I hadn't really sat down to do before. And now I am putting out this horror anthology podcast, kind of like radio dramas from like the 40s and 50s, called Lucid. And so yeah, I think it's just sort of like forced me to almost go back to, I really think about myself in middle and high school, when like I didn't have a driver's license. I couldn't just go anywhere to make a movie. I kind of had to just do it in my house, like by myself or with my brother, with my family. And so I think it's like I've been knocked back to that world, and it's actually been pretty fun and oddly liberating in a way, because I'm not kind of like Noah said, I'm not really trying to do what someone else needs me to do. I'm just kind of like, okay, what am I capable of doing right now, kind of by myself or remotely with friends, and let me just do this and have fun for myself.
That's awesome. I want to see this video now. That's so cool. No, for me, look, like I kind of like, no, I was like ready. I was like, 2020 is my year, amigos. I was like ready, with tequila and mezcal ready to go. And man, like our feature film, we booked a feature with MGM. It was like huge thing with Eli Roth. I was like, oh my gosh, he's my producer. And pandemic. It was like, it just, so many films shut down, and it was like my first big opportunity for a theatrical release, and it just all went downhill. And then for myself, I felt I was really sad, and I I'd never experienced a shutdown of a film. I think we all will at some point, whether it's a pandemic or not, or, you know, a hierarchy changes at the studio, whatever it is. I think it happens to everybody. It will. And it was a way for me to learn real quick how to learn to have thick skin. And I think that's a really important thing to have in this business. And I thought I had it, and I really didn't. And at that time, it really forced me to just think about like what to do next. And I realized nothing's really stopping me. And I felt that time was just so inspiring to just stay as productive and not be so down, because it wasn't, I didn't realize it wasn't my fault soon enough. It didn't click in, because we were 6 weeks into prep. We were ready to shoot a movie, and then blah, it just all died. And you know, I got back with my, you know, best friend and producer here in Vancouver. I was like, man, let's make a short film again. I was like, let's just kick it back and make something. So we called up, you know, Crypt TV, and we were like, yo, we're free. Do you want us to make a short film? They're like, yeah. So, you know, we just went back to our roots, made a short film. It comes out tomorrow for Day of the Dead. If anyone's curious to watch it, call Mistress of Bones. But it was just so cool to, because I've been away in LA and trying to, you know, make in the business on that side. But it was so cool just here in Vancouver, call back all the friends, all the familia, and just come back and make a short film. To me, that's beautiful, that you can just kick it back and just stay creative. And we built this little room I'm in, this little booth. My parents nearly killed me, by the way, because my mom came down the stairs and she just saw a giant hole in the wall. She's like, ¿Qué es eso? I'm like, Mom, I swear it's worth it. It's gonna pay off. And because I didn't know if I was gonna direct again. And as a voiceover actor, this was the best investment. It was like, it's fine. I don't have to direct right now. I could just do other stuff and be directed by other people. That's how you learn, is just working on as many projects as you can. And I just focused on the short film and focused on acting this year a lot. And it's been great. It's been wonderful to stay busy. So 2021, we're coming back, baby. We're coming back. Yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of other people, I also experienced having projects cut loose. And I lost my day job at the beginning of the pandemic. So that was really scary. LA is not cheap. So it was a scary couple of months, but I was able to kind of like pick myself up and like stay creative with that time. Like just keep writing, because that's what you can do without a budget. You can write spec scripts. And I wrote like another feature that I probably wouldn't have written otherwise. And like I'm still like, I'm writing a lot more than I did before. And like I found a new freelance gig that I like better than my day job. So that was like a plus. And I managed to do 2 music videos with a very, very tiny crew, me and 2 other people in like my friend's dining room. And we managed to like make it really cool in a creative way with like low budget and not very many resources. So yeah, definitely been getting more creative with the projects that I have been able to make, and like shooting virtually. A lot of people have been doing like Skype and Zoom shorts. I did one of those. I did a musical. So I think like the biggest thing for me is like, it's definitely, the pandemic has brought out new fears, especially with the shifting of the Supreme Court. I'm working on a short about reproductive rights right now. So it's definitely like heightened specific fears for me. And it's probably gonna come out in my work. So yeah.
Oh, I love how many of you guys are leaning into the inspiration sort of aspect of you know, dealing with all of this. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Okay, so another question from our audience. So how do you find and connect with your audience, and what challenges have you run into trying to connect with or challenge well-established genre fans?
Well, let me break it to you right now. Genre fans are the most passionate, the most committed, the most honest fans of anything. Like they will tell you the truth. Like, you know, so definitely growing into it, I learned real quick how passionate the horror fans especially are, just by putting all my work on YouTube and doing viral videos. Yeah, you encounter the troll here and there, but these are the kind of fans you do want to hear out. These are the kind of fans you do want to listen to. Although there are different subgenres that not everybody likes. You can love social horror but hate slashers. You know, that's different when it comes to personal taste, but there's certain, you know, comments, and there's certain ways to really get to know the fans and what they like. Like I always recommend, like, you get, I don't know if we'll have horror conventions again, but you know, that was one of my favorite things to attend to, because you could really see and experience the kind of stuff that the audience likes and what they're attracted to. And as a fan, my most favorite thing has been to sit in the audience while a film of mine is playing, as much as I'm like biting my nails and sweating and, like, you know, having literally an anxiety attack. That's the best way, I mean, for me to really feel what worked and what didn't, when the product is finished. Because I feel I'm still learning, I'm still young, I'm still new at this. And I find that's the best way to just know what worked and how to interact with the audience, is be a fan with them. Be a fan with them. And I love, man, I have to say, at NFFTY, when El Gigante played and I sat in the audience, whoo, like people were freaking out of disgust because there was so much gore in it. There's like, you know, it's like a lucha libre mask was sewn on the guy's neck, and it just cuts to when he tries to pull it and it pulls on his neck. And I was just waiting for that moment because I didn't know if it worked or not, because I've been editing it for so long. And NFFTY was the first place it played. And when it did that, and every single person went, like everybody just like, and my heart was like, honey, please. I was like, so happy. And it was, those are the moments that are so inspiring when you are part of it with the fans. I think, I don't even know if I answered your question. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore, but the fans are great and you should definitely listen to them. I'm gonna shut up now. I don't even know what I said.
No, I totally agree about you got to sit with your audience, and especially if it's a genre, if it's horror, if it's sci-fi, like there's nothing, it's who you made it for.
Yes.
And even if theaters are going to evolving, I will say generously, you know, you still, just the conversations you have afterwards, like with Watch Room, just the geeking out on simulation theory and artificial intelligence. It's just to know you've put so much research into something. We did a screening actually at Google Brain, which is, you know, that's where DeepMind is, and you know, to have screened that movie for them, and for them to have had diverse opinions about it and coming up afterwards and trying to like work out the puzzle. And these are like, you know, scientific heroes of mine, and to hear them trying to piece the thing together was most pleasing. So I feel, but then to answer your other question, Anna, I feel like to find your audience, besides posting things online, because there's a democratization of the internet, of course, but you know, partnering with the outlets that you know, are passionate about the same thing as you guys. You know, to plug Dust, I mean, Dust is the preeminent place for sci-fi fans, and an Alter as well for horror. So I know for us, like, just getting the number of eyeballs we got, of not just, these aren't just random eyeballs, these are people who desperately love science fiction and they want to engage on the level that you put into the work. I feel like that's the no-brainer, is just try to align yourself with distribution areas and partners who care about the thing that you care about.
Yeah, I have to echo the point about the audience, and yeah, and I want to plug Nifty or Dust as well. I really like cannot show my appreciation enough, because my Stevie's Aliens, it was my NYU thesis film as well, and I figured after it went to festivals, I would put it on my website, like 100 people would see it, and that would kind of be it. And I don't know where you guys found all these people, but like people are actually watching this 15-minute film from start to finish and like have thoughts and want to know more about this aspect or whatever. And you spend a lot of time and maybe money, or raise a lot of money on a short film like that. And I'm just happy people are seeing it. And I mean, and Nifty as well. I mean, getting to screen my film, and then standing up at the screen afterwards and like having people come and want to talk to me about it was just this really awesome, amazing experience. And I think I've been fortunate that I haven't had any issues getting genre fans to I guess like breaking in with them, I guess you would say. But I would echo what Noah said. I think partnering with people like Dust or whoever, I think that's just crucially important, because you guys have these connections, you have this audience that's already ready for these films. And I think if you can go and search for the outlets that are showing the work that is similar to what you've made, that's the best way to get more people to see it. And just make sure you do the work of trying to put it in those places.
Yeah, I definitely miss festivals, getting to like sit with the audience and hear their reactions. That's like my favorite part of a screening, is like you can't control like how you react when you're like sitting in a theater in the dark, and like that's a great way to like gauge how your content is doing. And then like after, you get to talk to people, you get to connect with them. And genre fans are definitely passionate.
Yeah.
They will tell you what's wrong with your film. They will tell you what they liked and what they didn't like. And now, like with so many festivals being online, people are connecting like through Twitter. That's what I've found. And like horror Twitter is very loud. So like if people enjoy your content, they'll reach out to you, they'll find you. And it's really cool, because it's easy to feel like swallowed up like among so many great shorts, because there's so many. And like having someone like tweet at you or message you and just be like, your film really spoke to me, or I can't wait to see what you do next. Where can I continue to like see your work, is really cool. And like having film festivals online has made it like so much more accessible to people who wouldn't otherwise get to see your film at a festival in person. So it's cool like that it's getting like a different sort of life online. Like what Daphne saw, my film is finishing up its festival run right now, and I'm hoping that it'll have like an entirely new life when it's public. So yeah, like it'll be cool to see like how fans continue to respond like once it is on a public platform.
Awesome. So we only have a couple minutes left. So let's go on to a quicker fun question. Is there a movie, TV show, book that specifically sparked your interest in horror or sci-fi or just genre media in general?
Okay, so I kind of said this already, but
Yeah.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the first time I saw that, I was watching it on a portable DVD player, so not even like a big screen. And that I saw that and I was like, okay, like that was when I realized that filmmaking was a job that people did. And I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. And I think that for sci-fi and for horror, Oh my gosh, that movie, The Haunting in Connecticut. I don't know if people talk about that anymore or whatever, but that was the first movie. That was the first horror movie that I went to go see in theaters. I was in 8th grade, I believe, and it's mainly sort of like jump scares, and it's not like whatever. But I mean that night when I went to bed, like that was all that was in my head, and I think like a weird part of me was like, okay, but if this fictional movie could scare me so much, like I could do something like that, and I could like scare other people and like pay it forward, I guess.
It's like it's such an impossible question because I'm trying to figure out how far back I can go. I mean, 2001 was a seminal experience. I remember just as a 12-year-old watching that with my best friend down the block, and then we actually did a double feature, walked down to my place and we watched A Clockwork Orange again as a 12-year-old.
Oh, so good.
But I've
So
never
good.
seen Clockwork since because it was such an exhausting day.
You should
But
rewatch it.
I look forward to. I went to this really awesome Kubrick exhibit in London while I was at a festival last year. I spent 5 hours at like a 2-hour exhibit just reading all these artifacts and things. It's like The Shining as well. I think I'm definitely a Kubrick stan, but I also feel like I remember though it's not live action, The Nightmare Before Christmas. It was given to me as a gift by my new infant sister to like keep me occupied while she was being born. And I remember watching that movie just on repeat on VHS. It just really captured my imagination. And then as far as magical realism goes, I think I've always liked to find this playful, dark and playful, middle ground. And I just rewatched it recently, but Pan's Labyrinth is one of my favorite magical realism films. It's a genre that we've only, but that's definitely a space I hope to sort of push further.
Well, for me, I mean, it's hard to also pick one because I feel like the reason why I went to film school and I want to be a director is like not even a horror movie. It was Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men, and I saw that when I was 16. And at that age, I was a brat. Like I was that little sister that nobody wanted to have around because I was like super mature. I was watching just like very very I was watching only like Adam Sandler movies at that time. I was watching like super silly, gory, like horror films, but I didn't really have the desire yet to be a filmmaker. I just loved cheesy horror, cheesy comedies, and when I saw Children of Men in the theater, I went only because I wanted to crash my sister's date because I knew she was going with some guy, and the theater it wasn't too far away, so I went with a couple friends. I'm like, hey, let's totally like kill her date, and that's what they were watching. But that movie was so incredible, and I'd never seen anything like that in my life. That it was a social commentary, and it was actually quite horrific of what the world could come to. And we're not far from it if you haven't seen it. And not to make the story too long, but the guy that she was dating at the time was a film student. And 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 at the end of the movie, after she got mad at me and all that, the guy she was with, he was like, well, if you like that movie, that's what I'm studying in school. And I was like, you study movies in school? He's like, yeah, it's called film school. I was like, I was like, you're learning how to make that? He's like, oh yeah. Did you know this guy's name is Alfonso Cuarón and he's Mexican? You should check out his other friends like Iñárritu and Guillermo del Toro. And I was like, there's more Mexicans making, like, I just couldn't believe everything that guy was telling me. And I still to this day, I remember I went home, dropped my bags, and I was like, Mom, Dad, I'm going to film school. And thanks to that moment, it just opened up all these like movies made by Latinos. And it led me to Robert Rodriguez. So I stuck in that like grindhouse. You can see it a lot in my work. Then it led me to like Rob Zombie and like all those crazy gritty films. But it all started thanks to Children of Men. Yeah.
Yeah, I said like earlier that the films that like inspired me to like want to make movies was Star Wars, like the original trilogy. And then like later for horror, it was Lost Boys. I am definitely
so
like,
good.
yeah, I love like campy stuff. Like I don't really make like campy stuff, but I love camp. So yeah.
That's a great movie.
It is.
It's
It's great.
so good.
Cool. Well, I guess in the last few moments, you guys have mentioned it before, but if you want to tell the audience, where they can see your films, if there is somewhere that they can see some of your work out there, yeah, why don't we let them know where they can find your work or find out more about you?
Sure, I'll go first. we're all so polite on this
I
panel.
know.
I love it. I love it. It's been quite the nicest Zoom call I've been on for sure. Well, you can check out my feature debut, Culture Shock, on Hulu. El Gigante, if you want some like real insane gore and lucha libre and all that in a span of 14 minutes, go on Shudder. And then tomorrow, my latest short film, Mistress of Bones, comes out on Crypt TV for Day of the Dead. So stay tuned for that.
Cool. For me, so Watch Room can be found on Dust, can be found on Amazon. You can also find it out on my website, which is just noahwagner.com, and it has all of my work on it. That's where Fortissimo, the mime film, is, and a whole host of other things.
My website's my name, austinSharris.com. So that's where everything is. Stevie's Aliens, the short I kept talking about. If you like Stranger Things and ET and stuff, that's on YouTube and it's on Dust. And the podcast I mentioned briefly, it's called Lucid. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, all those things. If you're like not stressed at all right now, if you're sleeping a little too well, like I recommend checking that out. It'll solve all your problems.
My work is on my website, lizzmarshall.com, with two Z's in Liz. My film What Daphne Saw isn't out yet, but it will be very soon. So if you want to like stay updated, I'm at Liz Skywalker on social media.
And I'll just plug Dust and Alter. Watchdust.com, watchalter.com, or you can find them both on YouTube. Also Watch Dust and Watch Alter. Dust for you sci-fi fans, Alter for you horror fans.